Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a sports ethos show brought to you by our great partners at FanDuel. On today's episode, it's my 30-team deep dive, breaking down buy lows, sell highs, ads, drops, you name it, I cover it, and let's dive right in. And maybe ease in a little bit because it's a big show today. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the old waiver wire articles and the news. There's a lot going on in the NBA. I think I have a league winner for you. We will discuss when we get to the Dallas Mavericks here. But as usual, we're going to go in alphabetically. We're going to start with the Atlanta Hawks. We'll ease into all of this with a little Nickeil Alexander-Walker. A lot of questions about whether or not he's going to be as good as he's been so far this season. He's shooting extraordinarily well this season. It's going to be a career high if he holds up. 44.6% from the field on a whopping 16 attempts per game. He's been shooting 38% from deep, which is kind of where he lives, but he's doing it on 8 attempts per game. These numbers are generally up. His steals are generally up. He'd be at a career high 1.1 per game. So now we have no more Trae Young, and we're starting to see what Atlanta's up to. We're going to get past this trade deadline and know for sure if they're actually going to try to make a push in the East with this new core. CJ McCollum added to this new core, by the way. And I kind of feel like they don't really care about this season. Like there's not like some push to make something happen here. They know they've got this new core and they can kind of game it out from year to year. But at the same time, this is the Atlanta Hawks, and they always will have something up their sleeve where they're going to do something to change course. And here we might see them make a big play. If they added another name, I think that's the only way that Nickeil Alexander-Walker has any really appreciable value loss or depreciable fantasy loss. I think his top 40 to 50 value on a per game basis is pretty much locked in stone. Now, is this a high watermark for him shooting as well as he's been shooting on the volume that he's been shooting? Yes, it certainly is. How much erosion could we see if he starts to slip a little bit? I don't know. Maybe around, maybe 2 tops. Otherwise, I think he's just set to cruise. And what I think we're witnessing here is a player who has always had this in him. I mean, when we look back to his days in New Orleans, he was actually shooting the ball quite a bit. He was their lead guy for much of those seasons. And then more of a journeyman, stepping into a defensive role, shooting when told to shoot. And then he started shooting a little bit more and shooting a little bit more. He shot the Minnesota Timberwolves out of a few playoff games, but we won't hold that against him. He has this lead guard mentality and this lead guard skill set in him. And the fact that he defends really makes it all possible, because it's one thing to take a lot of shots and then you don't defend and your teammates don't like that. Because of the defense that he plays and because of the role being really, really locked in stone right now for Atlanta, I think they're content to let him go out there and continue doing this. It offers a nice balance to what Jalen Johnson brings, and he's had a great season. It's not necessarily something bad about Jalen Johnson, but if you're constantly going to Jalen Johnson as a big out there on the perimeter, yeah, you invert the floor a little bit, but you need your traditional guard to get out there, get downhill, handle a lot of these tasks, and provide the balance that the offense needs. And I think those two players work well as a tandem. Now, speaking of CJ McCollum, he's been a mixed bag in Atlanta, 27 minutes per game. I think the 18 points per game in Atlanta makes you look at him and think, okay, hey, is he going to start impacting other players here? You know, we don't want him to handle the ball so much. We don't want him to take from Jalen Johnson, for example. We don't want him to take from Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I don't think that's going to be the case. His average is 18 points, 1.3 triples, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 1.5 combined defensive stats, and percentages that are in the trash. I think, one, they're not going to be impacting the other main fantasy assets too much. Maybe a round, somebody gets dinged by a round, and that's it. CJ is going to be a little bit tougher to repackage in a trade because his salary can't be aggregated. And then in terms of his own overall fantasy value, I don't know if these percentages are going to get back to being anything good. Sure, there's some players that he could probably vibe with. I think there's enough offensive talent in this team to keep that side of the equation from going too heavily south. But the problem is he's just lost a step. Yeah, he can reach up to this guy and get you a big game every once in a while, but can he keep these percentages in a good spot so when he scores lower than he would score, because he's like third, fourth, fifth banana at this point, when he's going to score in a lower range, he needs to be really good everywhere else. I don't think he's going to get there. If you need to drop CJ McCollum to add somebody else, he hasn't really been that good this season. And I don't think he's going to be great for Atlanta the rest of the way. So feel free to make a drop for any of the players that we'll talk about. here in the rest of the show. Now, Kristaps Porzingis, is he a drop? This is an interesting one because he is getting you value when he's on the floor. It's top 55 in 9 cat leagues, which plays a lot better than the top 85 that he gets in 8 cat leagues. He's played in 17 games this season, 24 minutes per game, 17 points, just under 2 threes, 5 boards, 3 assists, and 1.8 combined defensive stats. He's being evaluated this week for a left Achilles issue. There is video of him running up and down the floor. So it does look like he is attempting to come back and play. Always a question with Kristaps Porzingis. I think this is a good time to hold Kristaps Porzingis. However, he's not a must-hold player. I think you want to try to catch him on the upswing to see if maybe there's a little bit of consistency in there that we're not able to really project with any degree of confidence. But if he has a good game, has another good game, has 3 good games, next thing you know, you're riding that wave to see how far it'll go. And at the same time, are we going to project Kristaps Porzingis to play a whole lot of games the rest of the season? No. And I think when you take these values, even the top 55 and 9 cat leagues, and you look at them over the rest of the season, they play like top 150 at best. So I think you can drop Kristaps Porzingis, but if you've got no real target out there and not a lot of upside and whatever those additions might be, just give it a week and let's see what Kristaps Porzingis does. All right, let's get out of Atlanta. Let's head to the Boston Celtics because there's a big old story brewing in Boston. His name's Jason Tatum. He went out and had one of those look at me kind of workouts where the media was certainly there and invited. And instead of working out on the side or when the media is not there or in some other limited capacity, he did the full dog and pony show. He's like, I can do this, I can do that. Look at me do here. I can dunk. I can play a little bit of offense against an actual defender. And we're looking at 8 months and 1 or 2 weeks in terms of his return timeline, which, by the way, Drew Smith just pulled off in 9 months. And that's the timetable that's been most commonly associated with Jason Tatum, is about 9 months. And the great Noah Dalzell, who we had on the show, I think a summer ago, her breakdown, and then Jack Simone, and I forget the affiliation for Jack Simone. The two of these reporters put together great breakdowns of how all of these practices went and what they looked like, how they felt, just kind of the vibes there. He's trying to play is my takeaway here. And one of the doctors that Dalzell interviews that, specialist in this area of Achilles recovery timelines, has basically said, look, we don't have a lot of data on the Jason Tatums of the world. He went and had that surgery really quick after he was hurt. None of the prior candidates or prior data points for this type of a return timetable are in their prime with his maniacal workload, with the money this guy has to be able to put all these resources together to go around the clock like one of his mentors, Kobe Bryant, would. And try to come back in time for a playoff run, which, by the way, becomes very, very important with Boston as the number 2 team in the East. This all is lining up toward Jason Tatum beating the timetable that everybody else has associated with him, which, by the way, is basically right now. Do I think he's coming back right now? No. But can he get back after the All-Star break? Or maybe because everybody takes off and they don't want to ask all their players not to go to Jamaica or wherever they're going to go during the All-Star break. Maybe they say, hey, Jason, let's get you back after a week or 2 following the All-Star break. When everybody's back, we'll run you through all the major tests, the last final 5-on-5 stuff, and all the different things. And Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla have talked in various capacities about all the different steps that he's going to have to get through. And it's a lot. He's going to have to play 3-on-3 and all the way up the ladder to get to the 5-on-5. And they're going to make sure that, it's all staged out. But maybe within the next 2 to 4 to 5 weeks, we get the closure on this that seems like it could happen at any moment. But I think they'll be smart. I think they will, after the All-Star break, get him back in probably about 2 weeks after the All-Star break. So what does that give us? It gives us about 20 to 25 games of top 10 to 15 value. And by the way, most teams have about 35 to 39 games left. So if he gets 20 or 25, he's actually up and over the 50% mark for the rest of season amount of games that most teams have right now. So that's all sorts of good. Like, not only if you're in a playoff format are you going to get the biggest piece of that, but also just statistically, those kinds of valuations. Let's say he comes back as a top 25 guy. We'll cut him a little slack that he doesn't come back as Jason Tatum. That really profiles well. I think it profiles in the 125 range, kind of at worst over that span. And you could get more if he just gets back and say 25 out of like 39 games or something. He's going to play 3/4 of the games, 25 out of 35 potential games, compared to other players in the league. You are looking at a nice grab. I'm thinking independent of having IR slots, it's time to stash Jason Tatum because the back end of this schedule looks really, really good. I did it in one league and I wanted to do it in a whole lot more. However, I have a lot of red crosses next to guys' names, and that makes it hard to stash. All right, enough about Boston. Let's get to Brooklyn. Questions coming in about Michael Porter Jr. What are we doing here? Are we selling? Are we better off holding? And it's an interesting thing. It was a buy the book, sell high on draft day. It was a buy the book, sell high 1 month in. And he cruised at about top 30, 40 value for most of the front end of this season. And you thought to yourself, hey, Michael Porter Jr. is having a good season. The rest of the league thought Michael Porter Jr. is having a good season. Let's trade for this guy because Brooklyn doesn't want him realistically. And they want to try to get something for him. And Michael Porter Jr. has championship pedigree, as well as the ability to come in and help a team for these playoffs. So we're going to see some fun stuff with Michael Porter Jr. going on. However, he did a little bit of a too good of a job now because over the last month, he's been a top 20 guy. And instead of being a top 30 to 40 guy in the season, he's now a top 20 guy on the season on a per game basis. So he's cruising. And now the question of what do I do? Do I sell high? It got a little bit more complicated because as a top 30 or 40 player looking at a trade to go to another spot, and it seems very, very likely for that to happen. Okay, he's back into the top 75 range where he was with Denver. Granted, he was with a couple big box score guys, so he could actually be better. Like, say he somehow found his way to Golden State. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen, but if they say, oh, we need a lot of Michael Porter Jr. in this mix, maybe he's a top 50 guy. Okay, I got my top 30 to 40 guy. That's going to possibly be a top 50 to 75 guy. Okay, yeah, I could sell high, but everybody's probably scared off on the Michael Porter Jr. front, thinking that he's going to be a part of the tanking mix in Brooklyn. Well, what if he gets traded? His value is going to go in the tank, and then you don't get anything that good back. And it just makes sense. Hey, I'll take my top 40 guy, and I'll roll him into a top 55 kind of average play rest of the season. And I don't need to sell Michael Porter Jr. I'll just hang on. And maybe he'll be better than everybody thinks. But now he's a top 20 guy, and that value change can go to top 75. Well, I do think you got to start looking at top 40 and top 50 sell high deals. And that is going to be enough value swap right there to ensure that you have good value going forward out of this roster slot of yours and possibly get out of that top 75 risk if he gets traded to a good team and he's only on the outside shooting threes and getting occasional big lines mixed with duds, and then it all ends up being top 75. I think there is now rationale to sell a little bit high and to get aggressive about it because this thing's going to happen really, really quick. And by the way, top 20 value looks really, really good right now. Now, for the rest of the Brooklyn Nets, a little bit of an interesting week or so. Day'Ron Sharpe was one of my top pickups about a week ago. He had been on a top 100 run with some top 80 notes in there. And then on the last month, he's still in the top 100. He just missed a game due to illness. So that train slowed down a little bit. Noah Clowney had a top 75 stretch earlier in the season, and his shooting's been really bad lately, but he's picked it up shooting, and he's in that top 100 range. So we have multiple players that could be a part of the tank going down the stretch that are starting to approach top 100 value. Danny Wolf starting to get into that range, top 100 to 125. Over the last 4 games, 18 minutes a game, 10 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, 3.8 cash counting stats, which are steals, blocks, and threes that Wolf has gotten with just 0.8 turnovers in that span to make this worth top 100, top 125 value. And then Nick Claxton, top 100 per game this season in 30 minutes per game. And we can kind of just set it and forget it. We got about 4 top 100 players here to consider. And I think you basically just rank them this way. Nick Claxton, he's got the job right now. Not a real reason to not let this guy play down the stretch, and maybe they get more aggressive with the tanking and Nick Claxton falls off the radar. But that said, you run out Danny Wolf, and maybe this is part of the plan. You run out Danny Wolf and Day'Ron Sharpe as your only bigs and Noah Clowney as your only bigs. It's going to get ugly in terms of development, and it's going to get ugly in the win-loss column. And, of course, they could go that route. But I think they'll play Nick Claxton unless they have like a real reason, injury-wise, not to play him. And he's locked into this value, and he gets you pretty good stats. If you can punt that free throw percentage, it certainly helps him. And he has had an improvement in that area, but it's all top 100 stuff. Clowney is interesting to me as maybe the guy who could get up into that top 75 range and really cook and end the season on a top 60 run. I think I probably will go whatever direction I need a position at. Day'Ron, Sharp, Clowney are kind of in the same ballpark, even though their stat sets and their production outcomes are kind of totally different. Like Sharp is very much set it and forget it, low and slow. He's going to get you some defensive stats. One of the reasons he's been slow lately, he hasn't been getting those lately, but he's been scoring and rebounding the ball more. But he's just there, and his 20 minutes are just top 100 ball, and it's not a lot of wiggle there. With Clowney, if he gets into a 37% shooting slump, as was the case a couple weeks back, you get this kind of big value change where he's back at the bottom of the top 200. Oh, now he's back in the top 75. So it's up and down with Clowney and all around. But if he can get the shooting worked out and he can have control of the entire position, no Michael Porter Jr., some additional shots heading his way, I do think there might be a little bit more upside for him than Day'Ron Sharp, but they're basically tier 2. And then Danny Wolf, I do think if you have a need for a big man, he's going to cruise to these low numbers. And yeah, if he gets more minutes, I think probably we'll see some of these cash counting stats normalize a bit. He's not going to be out there and be a steals and blocks monster, Danny Wolf. And if anything, he profiled the opposite way for this first stretch of the season here. But overall, if you want to lose games and Danny Wolf is one of your last big men standing, I think he and Sharp and Clowney are a great trio there to take on the quote unquote power rotation. And if Claxton plays great, I think these guys still play the 20 minutes per game. They need to stay on the radar. And there could be a lot more if Brooklyn throws everything in the tank. It's a lot of time spent on Brooklyn. Let's get to Charlotte. The Ryan Kalkbrenner and Moussa Diabate conversation has been a conversation for most of the season. Ryan Kalkbrenner early on easily winning out. He had a top 40 stretch to start the season, and then it simmered back to top 60, then to top 80. Then he gets hurt. Then he's back. Moussa Diabate has been starting, and he's been zigzagging around the top 90 to 150 range over the last few weeks. And at the same time, being listed with kind of odd injury designations. He had a wrist injury, he had a hip injury, he had a hamstring designation during the last 3 weeks. And just like I said, zigzagging 90, 150, 90, 150 all over the place. He's 140 to 165 on the season and 24.4 minutes per game, 8 points, 8+ boards, 1.7 combined defensive stats, good field goal percentage, bad free throw percentage, good turnovers. So that's what you get with Moussa Diabate. It looked like for a second early on this season that he was going to have a late round profile in low minutes per game. Some of the struggle games and possibly due to injury have knocked him back to this 140 to 165 range. But right now he's starting, and we have seen enough top 90 games out of him. And I do think he's got a little bit of a place in this NBA. He's more athletic than most centers out there. Defensively, he could probably do things that most guys can't do. He's got a lot of inexperience issues. And so it's inconsistent from night to night. Right now, I think he's worth a stab to think, maybe this is going to hold up and you can have multiple weeks of Moussa Diabate giving you good field goal percentage, good blocks, good boards, and classic big man stats. And then as for Kalkbrenner, his value's dipped on the season. He's a top 95 to 120 guy, 25 minutes a game, 9.6 boards, 2.2 combined defensive stats, great field goal percentage. And then the foul line's not as bad for him, 71.7%. From the foul line, just 1 turnover per game. And in his 5 games back right now, he has been in the bottom of the top 200, 20 minutes per game, same stat profile, but just 0.8 combined defensive stats. So he's not quite there, and this is an outlier for sure. So when he gets the defensive stats figured out, if he's still playing 20, 24 minutes per game, it's probably late round value. I don't know if I'm excited to tell you guys to go run out there and pick up Ryan Kalkbrenner at this point. I do think this is a position battle at this point. And if Diabate isn't, let's say, equally as good as Ryan Kalkbrenner, I think Kalkbrenner will probably overtake him. The tie goes to Kalkbrenner at this point because he's the highly drafted guy that they want to see develop right away. Moussa Diabate, at some point, that designation won't hurt him anymore in this position battle. He's got to be a little bit better, but I think he can be. And right now he's starting, so he's the guy that we want in fantasy leagues for right now. And then the question of the Hornets in general is actually getting more and more interesting. I don't know that we've been this interested in Charlotte for a bit. So right now we have 6 or 7 tanking teams, depending on what you make of New Orleans. And Charlotte's been basically rolling out their best squad every night. You're getting a little bit more respect out there in the basketball world. People starting to view this core of Con Knipple and Brandon Miller more favorably, and starting to talk about, well, what if we add players to this versus how do we extract players? Though a Miles Turner trade rumor did come out with a guy who wears a suit, and I believe that's his qualification. But this tanking question, I kind of think right now Charlotte has an internal organizational goal to try to make the play-in, because there's an experience gained from that. There's an internal approval that you get from that if you're the Charlotte Hornets that I think will carry some weight with them internally. So I'm not thinking they're tanking, and this is great news for everybody involved. And the longer that they can keep winning games, the less you have to worry about them starting to just sit guys in mass. And so for everybody involved, I think that's a really cool story that Charlotte's actually winning enough to make sure that they want to compete for a play-in. All right, guys, before we move on, quick reminder, if this show is helping out your team, please subscribe to the NBA, Fantasy NBA Today pod feed and the Sports Ethos YouTube channel. Actually, you wouldn't know it, but it really helps us out. So let's get to the Chicago Bulls. Is Jalen Smith a 12-team player rest of season is a question that I got. And Smith's been good lately. I mean, he's got a 4-game flurry in the top 90 range, 13 points, 2 triples, 10.5 boards, 2.3 assists, 1.8 combined defensive stats. Now the percentages are bad and the turnovers are low, so it's kind of a crisscross kind of a deal. The biggest thing is he's getting 30 minutes a game right now. And so that is way out of his wheelhouse. I mean, he's been limited to the 18 minutes per game role for seasons now. And anytime that he's had an opportunity to go up and beyond, he's hurt himself in some capacity and or not been productive enough to justify the hype. I mean, we had Jalen Smith as a mid-round guy, I want to say 4 seasons ago, and Indiana just wouldn't let him have it. And here he is getting 30 minutes a game. So of course he's an ad. Is he a 12-team guy for the rest of the season? I do think that that's at risk, if anything, due to the injury profile. Also, you do have Josh Giddey coming back. At some point, Zach Collins will come back. I don't really think Zach Collins is going to factor in right here. There would be a question of what happens after the trade deadline, which could, by the way, be favorable if they trade Nikola Vucevic. So Jalen Smith sits in a nice profile right now. He's probably got like 2 to 3 weeks of leash as we figure out what's going on with the trade deadline. And if I had to put odds on whether or not he can actually pull this off and be a top 125 guy the rest of the way all season long, I would probably put that at about like 55, 60%. So Jalen Smith, his stock has certainly improved, and he's certainly worth an ad right now. And I think that's all I want to talk about in Chicago. Let's get to the Cleveland Cavaliers, where Jalen Tyson was dropped in a ton of fantasy leagues about a week ago. I play fab leagues that are weekly fab runs. For the most part. And so to see this much Jalen Tyson available this last week was like a gift from the sky. And so I stopped what I was doing and I made big bids for Jalen Tyson. And if you have Jalen Tyson available on your waiver wire, you should stop this show. Wait until we get to the Dallas Mavericks section to maybe possibly consider another option. But Jalen Tyson is a top 95 to 105 value on the season in just 27 minutes per game. All the numbers are really, really nice, like 13.5 points, 2 triples, 5 boards, 2 assists, 1.5 combined defensive stats, 52% shooting from the field, which, by the way, is not exactly easy. And I wouldn't call Cleveland like just some amazing environment that's propping these numbers up. 75.4% shooting from the foul line with limited attempts. I can live with that. And then the 1.4 turnovers are awesome. Now, over the last 3 games when he's had an expanded role, 32 minutes per game, top 35 to 60 value in 9 and 8 cat leagues respectively. So that gives you 22.3 points, 4 triples, 6.7 boards, 4 assists. Now the defensive stats are down, which is fine. I mean, he's shooting 59% of the field. He had a 38-point game, I believe, the other day. Everything's great. Everything's great. And he's got in this little sample here, just 3 full field goal attempts more than a season-long average of 10. So it's like this sample right here of top 35 to 60 value, it took 3 additional field goal attempts per game, and he had the bad defensive stats. We can offset that with the over and above shooting, but this is actually a sample we can believe in. And the question comes back to us, can this guy play more than 27 minutes per game for the rest of the season? And you just look at what he's able to do defensively. You look at what he's able to do offensively. He's young. He's healthy. The players around him are getting banged up. Darius Garland just took on another foot injury. And I think the answer is yeah, for sure. he could play more than 27.4 minutes per game. Now, maybe Kenny Atkinson has him locked into a role and he's never going to move the needle there. But I think 28, 29, 30, these are certainly numbers that are in play. You get one or two more injuries, and I think you start to see Jalen Tyson with a 31 or a 32 next to his name in the box score on a night-to-night basis. And that means you're sitting on a top 75 player at least, and maybe a top 60 guy, and maybe a top 50 guy. So Jalen Tyson, absolutely a run, don't walk kind of an ad. All right, Darius Garland, let's talk about that for a quick second. He's played 30 minutes a game in 26 of the team's 44 games. So this is like not an insubstantial number of minutes that are on the line with regard to kind of how this season has played out already in Cleveland. So he is now a major injury risk. It's a 7 to 10 day timetable right now for Darius Garland, and it's the other foot. So we have injuries to both feet. And I just think when you factor in the fact that this current injury that he's been dealing with all year, it's not exactly been getting greatly better. And now you have another injury on top of that. And this is a guy who's dealt with injuries his entire career. So with this, I think you kind of got to look at Garland's rest of season, availability, and almost look at it the same way that we've looked at this 26 of 44 games. That's probably the right math. Odds are probably 23 games, if I had to guess, but we'll see. Maybe he pulls it out, or he gets healthy, he puts it all together, and he can just play, say, 3/4 of the team's games the rest of the way. But there's a very good chance that he is not going to do that. Sam Merrill's had a hard time staying on the floor. He's 26 minutes per game in 24 of the 44 games. Probably a little bit better injury profile, though we can't say that based on this season. So we got two guys in Cleveland that are really, really risky for the rest of the year. You got DeAndre Hunter posting late round value over the last 3 games, 26 minutes per game, 16.3 points, 2.3 triples, 5 boards, 3 assists, 1 combined defensive stat, 2.3 turnovers per game. DeAndre Hunter worth a look as at minimum a short-term ad if you keep your expectations in check and you keep the upside off your mind, because I don't think that's happening. Otherwise, you got Donovan Mitchell shooting really well this season, and the environment getting tougher is not going to help that at all. I think with this Garland injury, it further entrenches Donovan Mitchell in what I will call a hero role. I think last year he gave everybody else the ball and played team ball, and it worked, and they were the talk of the town. Got into the playoffs, obviously that thing shifted, and they had injuries as well. But this season heading in, I think he said, you know what? I gave my stats to everybody else. Also, I don't think this is going to work this season, so I need to take the ball and go. Now you got guys exiting stage left. I think Donovan Mitchell's going to keep his foot on the gas. Percentages could slip, but I don't care. Like, he's had a great season already. I ranked him high. I got him in a lot of places, so I'm okay with all of these things happening. And at the same time, he's going to be hitting the gas even harder. So some sliding percentages, but I think just keeping in this hero role for him is good for business. So that's one impact of the Garland injury. And then lastly, Evan Mobley, who I talked about in the earlier shows, I think he's going to have a remember me kind of a run, like slowly passing top 30 numbers and then top 20 numbers over the past handful of weeks, getting the free throw shooting, pardon me, online. And they're going to need him. They're going to need him. And I think that they're going to start running more and more stuff for him and allowing him to be in better shots for better places for a better shot diet. And then with the activity and the scoring and the good vibes and the free throw shooting, we might actually see top 15 Evan Mobley the rest of the way. And that was where he was drafted. Let's get to the Dallas Mavericks, because on one hand, we had one run, don't walk a few seconds ago. This one's a sprint, don't walk. So I'll quickly mention that we'll talk about Cooper Flagg possibly getting shut down. We'll talk about Anthony Davis, talk about Kyrie Irving even. But we're going to talk about whether Moussa Cisse is the new Adem Bona from last season. Well, Moussa Cisse is the new Adem Bona from last season. I spent way too much time Sunday afternoon looking at my high-stakes fab runs, deep diving the value of Cisse. Basically, aside from the eye test, which I'll get to in a second here, he's a blocks monster in the weighting. He had a block rate in college as high as 11 and 9.8 in his final season at Memphis. Not bad with the steals either, and the field goal percentage is certainly there. The biggest issue with him, aside from his contract status, is his foul shooting. The question is whether or not he'll clear 50%. Like it's a very viable question. Maybe he'll take more free throws. Maybe some higher leverage games will create more free throw situations. We build some confidence. He could be a 55 or a 60% shooter, but I wouldn't hold my breath. He's going to shoot 50%. He's going to take a ton of them. Like teams are going to want to foul this guy. But they were going to bust out the Hackasise in New York, getting in New York's game where they got run out by the Dallas Mavericks on Sunday. So he had 8 free throws in that game. He made 5. Kind of cutting through all of that noise. If he if he plays 25 minutes per game, he's probably going to have something in the ballpark of top 50 to 125 very probable production. That free throw number is going to be the thing that drags him back to 125. Now, if you don't care about free throws, he could be a top 50 guy the rest of the way. And he's got more upside beyond that. He just had a 4-block, 1-steal game with like 15 and 9 the other night. The other thing about that game is he jumped off the screen literally, and more on that in a second here. But as far as this production goes, if free throws don't matter to you, don't worry about the 125. If free throws are absolutely in play for you, 125 is theoretically on the table, but I think there's enough expected value gain to kind of take that off the table. I'm thinking that the lowest that he finishes the rest of the way, provided this contract situation gets figured out, will be like top 80. And that would be including a bad free throw percentage. I think what we're going to see for him is if he gets cut loose in a 27, 28, 29-minute roll down the stretch, which, by the way, his competition for minutes, Dwight Powell, old and possibly not able to handle the minutes he's currently getting, 20 to 25. He had 28 minutes in a couple games here. I think what they're doing with Dwight Powell is using him as the bridge to get to Cisse. Also, Jeremiah Robinson Earl on a 10-day contract. He's not going to play defensively where Cisse plays. He's not going to be blocking shots. He's not a rim protector. He's not the profile of player that Moussa Cisse is. Dan Gafford, well, he can't stay on the floor because his ankle might be chronically injured. I mean, I worry about that guy's career, let alone what he's going to be doing this season. The fact that he can't get into the game right now when Dallas might want to trade him, when he's got all the opportunity in the world to get things right, and Dallas' season is theoretically hanging by a thread, though we know which directions it's heading right now. He can't get on the floor. So Dan Gafford, not really a threat here. Like if Dan Gafford played 20 minutes, my guess is he would replace Dwight Powell's minutes. And so not really an option. If you're waiting on Dan Gafford, you'll be waiting quite a bit. And by the way, Moussa Cisse is like 10 times better than that guy right now. So Anthony Davis, not coming back until mid-March, obviously not a part of this equation. It might have played his last game for Dallas. In general, Moussa Cisse, the only thing that's even remotely questionable about this guy right now is his contract, where he's played 38 out of 50 games, I believe, on his 2-way deal. Theoretically, only has 12 more games left. Okay, maybe this is why people are cooling on him and let me get him in 9 of 11 high-stakes teams this weekend and getting him for basically $1 if I wanted to. So people are sleeping on Moussa Cisse, not literally, figuratively. And I think Dallas has every intention in the world of getting this deal done. You don't see a guy this size, with this mobility, with this leaping ability, with this strength in the NBA very often. It just doesn't happen. They've already seen it up close. They have a need at the center position. They need to create a roster spot. They need to trade and want to trade Anthony Davis. Dan Gafford, they want to trade him. I don't know if they'll be able to trade him. Dwight Powell, I don't know if he has the juice in the building that he once did, even though he's a long-term Dallas guy. Another possible tradee. Find a way, Dallas, to create a roster spot, and then you get a guy who I think is as elite gets in terms of a defensive, rebounding, shot blocking, high field goal percentage, screen setting combo in the NBA. He sets screens, and I'm looking at them and thinking the other guy's going to get hurt. I think the Cooper Flags and all the other players in the Dallas Mavericks are going to look at him and say, I want that screen. And I don't want anybody else's screen, because getting around that screen is going to be tremendously easy. And the guy can get up and play vertically. His passing, his offense, his shooting, like he's going to turn the ball over a ton. If you're in a 9-cat league, you'll just know that that's going to be a part of this thing. Free throws, obviously, this is a big problem for him in a fantasy league. But at the same time, this dude's going to dunk. He's going to get you like 75% shooting from the field. He might be one of the most efficient field goal guys we've seen in a while, because they're going to set screens with him. He's going to catch the ball in the short roll. He's going to get offensive rebounding chances. He's going to be all over the court. He's the quickest guy to the ball right now. And every single game I've watched, the opposing team's announcers and the Dallas Mavericks announcers have been drooling, just as I am right now. Stop what you're doing right now. Go pick up Musa Cisse. You will not be upset. All right, let's get to the Denver Nuggets. And a lot of people want to know about Peyton Watson and whether or not he can be this guy right now who's been a top 40 player at times, a lot of top 60 to top 80 ball over the last 3 to 5 weeks. Almost written off. It felt like they were going to get healthy for a second. And then the Nikola Jokic injury and all the other kind of ins and outs of the lineup have opened part of the seas, if you will, for Peyton Watson to get in there and really cash in on the promise that a lot of people hoped he had. But I don't think a lot of people thought he would be this skilled offensively with the basketball and this proficient, I'll couch it a little bit, proficient shooting the ball from deep, but he's had a lot of good 3-point shooting games. So he's showing you he can be a very versatile player in the NBA. Not only do you get the defensive and the blocks and that talent, you know, the athletic talent that he brings to the table, but the fact that he can actually be something of an offensive hub, I think it's a little overstated right now, because part of the plan here in Denver is to just, we got to give the ball to somebody. We're going to give it to Peyton Watson. And Peyton Watson has taken the ball and he's run with it. And there's an inertia to it. So people like Christian Brown, when he's returned, have deferred, and most people on the Nuggets have deferred to let Peyton Watson do his thing. All right, well, what's going to happen when the Nuggets are healthy, and that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks here. Well, he's been a top 120 player in 30 minutes per game this season, 14 points, 1.3 triples, 5 boards, 2 assists, 2 combined defensive stats, 50% from the field on 10 attempts per game, 73% shooting from the line. Okay, good, but not great. And the question that I would have in this particular situation is, unless we experience another injury like Jamal Murray gets hurt or something like that, I think Peyton Watson looks exactly like these numbers that we've seen here. I mean, he's opened a door to be something more, and I think the Nuggets will respect and honor that and give him a few extra shots going forward. At the same time, it's really hard when you're a player that's getting the ball a ton to go back into more of a spot shooting role. And I think you probably will see some regression in some of these numbers, because it'll be a lot more catch and shoot. It won't be as much of the easy stuff that you get that when you're the man. So I think you use his season long numbers as the indicator right here, and you plan for the rest of the season being a late round top 120 guy. A little bit of a bummer. It will go down as a good season for Peyton Watson, but if you need to sell high, you should do it and try to capture a top 75 player in return. Let's get to the Detroit Pistons. Asar Thompson. A lot of people are down on Asar Thompson, and I think I've been down on Asar Thompson from the beginning this season, but I'm cooling a little bit because he's picked up the pace a little bit. 5 games at top 50 to 75 value, combined 3.8 defensive stats. The last 3 games, points, rebounds, and assists dried up. We had the classic 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But hey, I'll take it. And this is a guy that's got all the talent and all the athleticism and all the potential in the world, but it's been a top 165 season, top 175 season, 26 minutes per game, 11 points, 6 boards, 2.6 assists, 2.4 combined defensive stats. Needs to be a lot better there. 51% from the field, 56% from the foul line, 3.4 attempts per game. So the efficiencies aren't there. The overall numbers aren't there. And in this little run, the Pistons have thinned out from time to time. And I think that's helped him. I think it's sparked a couple of those good games in there. But hey, it's signs of life. You know, top 50 to 75 was what people drafted for. I don't think the 3.8 combined defensive stats were something that were on the radar. And it's probably an outlier, almost certainly an outlier. But it's something. So I don't think this is the time to ditch out on Asar Thompson. I think you should keep your expectations in check, aim for top 100 numbers. If you're in a dynasty league, I think this might be a little bit of a buy window, because the last 3 games were really slow, but he's showing you something, and we haven't gotten a lot of that. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of a match for something to catch fire. And in a dynasty context, I do like this a lot more, because there is that 2 to 3, 4, 5 year window where you can consider, all right, well, maybe it didn't click this season, but he's a young guy and it'll click down the road. All right, let's get to the Golden State Warriors, where Jimmy Butler has an ACL injury. He's out for the season. That hits me hard on 3 pretty high profile teams for me, but we'll just find a replacement. We'll just keep chugging. But, you know, for you guys out there, if you had Jimmy Butler, you know, you're looking at how to replace this value. And I don't know if the Warriors are the place to replace it or not, but Brandon Pajemski, been a mid-round guy prior to the injury over the last couple of weeks. I think that's a high watermark for him, but with this injury, it puts him into a probable, maybe 75% chance for late round value with that mid-round potential being there. If it all works out well, I do think Golden State will make some moves and shake things up. And I do think that Podziemski will be one of the first, if not the first player to take the hit. So you kind of got to roll with it and be nimble, and you might want to grab that and also trade that while you can. It might be a good sell high for Brandon Podziemski right now, just based on speculative values. So he and DeAnthony Melton being a late round guy, even when you count in the games off that he's going to have, it's close. It's close. If you can manage the games off, he's starting to flirt with top 100 numbers. This injury of Butler certainly opens things up. There's talk and well-wishing that he could get up into the 30-minute range. It doesn't seem likely for DeAnthony Melton to do that. But if there was a scenario, now it's been presented that, hey, we just lost Jimmy, so we need a couple extra minutes. Maybe can you do it? We don't know. But late round value is the target here, whether you're talking games off or not. It's just which side of the late round value are you on? Are you on the top 100 side or are you on the top 140 side? With the rest, it's 140. Without the rest, it's 100. And then Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga just became a really interesting fantasy basketball conversation. If not for the bad stat set, the bad stat set moves him into late round territory when the things are going good. If you're punting certain areas, Kuminga's value can go up because those are the things that bring him down. And with Kuminga, we might see a flurry. I mean, if you're Golden State, and I think the ship has sailed. I don't think this injury means, okay, Jonathan Kuminga and the Golden State Warriors are going to sing Kumbaya and make it all work going forward. I mean, theoretically, they could hold through the trade deadline and try to do this in the offseason, but I just think they want to clear the deck. And if Jonathan Kuminga can play for 2 weeks and put up 20-plus points per game, you're going to get the Sacramento Kings drooling all over themselves to get Jonathan Kuminga. You might get another team in the mix, so there's an actual bidding war going on. But Jonathan Kuminga for 2 weeks, and then wherever he lands, they'll want him to play. But again, it's all about standard league categorical value. He has so many deficiencies that even when the going is good for Jonathan Kuminga, he is a late-round player, almost at best. I mean, he flirted with something a little bit better to start this season, and we told you guys not to buy into it, and then it panned out that way. And now here we are. Just consider him a possible late-round guy, and if you, like the Warriors, can capture that in a 2-week sample, and then you could turn around and flip him, wow, what kind of business are you doing? That's beautiful. All right, Houston Rockets, let's look at them. Jabari Smith's been a little bit more poppy this season, but all again, just like it has been for every other season, it's a top 11, or top 115 to 125 run for him this season. And he's playing a ton of minutes, 35 a game. It's all the same stats you're accustomed to: bad percentages, good turnovers. And the question is what can Jabari be? Like, there's a couple players that fit his, his archetype, and you've got like Khalil Ware is one of them, but Khalil Ware is way more poppy, and Jabari Smith. I mean, you might conjure up images of like Evan Mobley, or you might conjure up images of like Wemby as far as like an archetype is concerned. But those guys, they get it done, whereas Jabari Smith does not. And people are asking themselves when he has a big poppy game, is this actually going to move the needle for Jabari Smith? And I think he just needs a change in a lot of different things, but it's the shot diet that, for me, the catch and shoot that keeps him with a bad percentage. I don't care about the 2.3 triples per game. What I want to see is a better field goal percentage. And what I want to see is a more impactful breaking of the paint, so he can start to get easier buckets, which will lead to more involvement, which will lead to more free throws. And you start to lean into some of these strengths, and he's going to have to figure out ball handling and passing skills, because players of his height have a hard time putting the ball on the ground. And then he's going to need to get stronger. And if he's constantly being pushed off of his line, that means he's getting further and further away from the hoop. So Jabari Smith, it's tempting to take a quick check-in and be like, hey, Jabari Smith might be good, but I think he needs a change of environment, which is sort of obvious, but I think it's the shot diet that's the most interesting component of that. And if that were to somehow change, if he was to play the center position to change the diet up, and or you start to see him get a little bit better handle, so he doesn't get all of the defenders getting that low leverage and pushing him further away from the basket, that will be the thing that we key in on to see if Jabari actually has better dynasty value in the future than he has right now. Let's look at Reed Shepherd. I get a lot of Reed Shepherd questions because apparently I'm the Reed Shepherd guy, and I can be cool with that. He's been a top 85 to 110 value in the season. He's been a top 65 to 80 player by totals, availability, a skill. Who would have thought? This last month, it's been down towards the 200s. He's hitting just 40.8% from the field in his last 15 games. That's a big chunk. Remember, shooting guards have almost half season long trends, heaters and slumps. So he's in a little bit of a slump right now. I think Ime Udoka's brought the minutes back down to 21 because he's not hitting his shots rather than the 25 to 26 minutes per game he's been getting this season. So with this month-long 40.8% mark, his shooting is 44.3% on the season, which is kind of where you profile him if he's having a good year. So what does this mean? Well, it's buy low territory. If somebody drops Reed Sheppard, you'd be there to go pick them up and help them out. Because when this rebounds, it's going to look like 47, 48%, and he's going to get more minutes on top of that. And with these numbers, these are sustainable numbers, top 85 to 110 value. I mean, unless you're playing in a 8-team league, or if you're in a 10-team league and only top 100, top 75 lines play, due to games cap or whatever, yeah, you could probably build a case that Reed Sheppard isn't worth holding, ? But by the time all of this changes, or if it continues to go at the way it's going, that top 65 to 80 that he's already put in the books this season, that would have played in your league. And you should have played him and you should have held him. And if all goes well and he actually gets 27, 28 minutes per game and turns into the 3 pick that they thought he could be, which is questionable at best right now, you get even more upside beyond that. So take the bump that you're about to get, take the short-sightedness from other folks and put that into your roster. All right, let's get out of Houston. Let's get to the Indiana Pacers. Everybody wants to know what you're going to do with the Pacers. And usually it's going to be divest Pascal Siakam, top 50 to 60 by totals this season, playing in 42 to 44 games. By virtue of that, it's been a success. 68.1% from the foul line on 6 attempts, not successful. That drops him down to a top 85 to 100 value per game. The efficiencies in Indiana are the story for their value loss this season. So I think what you do with Siakam, everybody thinks he's having a great year because nobody pays attention to the foul stuff anyway, even though they should or could. I think you sell him right away. I think you sell him for a top 75 player. I think you sell him for a top 60 player, obviously, but a top 75 player. Hell, if you got a top 90 player with the arrow going in the right direction, like a Modest Bacelis or something like that, you do it. Because Siakam, they're already tanking in Indy. They're resting entire starting lineups in 1 games. These are classic tanking signs. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And he has played a ton of minutes. And so this one is classic sell high. In fact, you're going to have to pay a little bit of premium on top of it because I think everybody's hip, to what's going on with Pascal Siakam. So you're going to have to go down to top 75. I think top 80 should be in play. And depending on your risk profile for the free throws, you might get more or less aggressive from there. Andrew Nembhard, not as valuable, top 100 to 125 on the season. I think you can cut him based on his overall deficiencies in the defensive areas and the mediocre efficiencies in general. I think you could just cut him for the next, like Moussa Cisse, cut, Jalen Tyson, cut, Reed Sheppard, cut. Like, these guys are not going to play the rest of the season, and they'll be outproduced the entire way as well. So Aaron Nesmith, the shooting percentage has held him back 35.2% from the field this season. They're just not good, Indiana, and it's hitting everybody's field goal percentage. So that's not good enough to hold through this mess. And then you got Jay Huff. And he's the one I'm going to tell you to lean into here, probably because the fear of all the tanking and all the different things. And he's not really impacting winning on this particular squad. I don't know how many squads he would impact winning at like large scale. So they could toss him out there for 20 minutes a game, and it's not impacting anything, but it's getting you fantasy values, a top 105 to 130 guy in 9 and 8 cat leagues, respectively. Played in all 44 games this season, that Jay Huff with his bad knee. 20 minutes per game, 9 points, 4 rebounds, 2.1 blocks. I think he's leading the league. I'm not sure. And 1.4 triples. And everybody's asking, should I drop Jay Huff 24/7? So Jay Huff, the way that I kind of look at his overall value, and you kind of got to take some markers here. If you take out the terrible early start where it was just awful, the last 2 months have been top 50 to 80 ball and 22.5 minutes per game. So that's probably a little too optimistic because he's going to have some sort of a downswing in here, maybe multiples. Over the past month, he's been zigzagging around the top 80 to 90 range. That's where I feel comfortable evaluating Jay Huff. Another heater right now in the last 8 games has brought him into the early rounds, and this is why we put up with all of this at all times. 65% shooting from the field, not sustainable. And his cash counting stat totals up to 4.7 per game. Steals, blocks, threes, but mostly blocks and threes here. 23 minutes per game he does his damage in. So I think he will just cruise to play at least 75% of the team's games going forward, if not 85 to 90%. It might get a little rough toward the end of like April as they're super tanking. But I think there's so much inconsistency, pardon me, and also so much game-to-game variance, and it's a wonky top, whatever you want to assign to him, top 80. It's a wonky top 90 that people don't generally gravitate towards. So throw your buy low offers in there. I mean, you could go with a late round guy and see if it'll work out, and you might end up with some early round surges that stick. Let's get to the Los Angeles Clippers. Is Kawhi a buy low? Is Kawhi a sell high? Okay. So we're gambling anyway. We slice this, guys. I think if you're a team looking to acquire Kawhi Leonard, try to do it with a scare. Try to do it with the scare that's out there right now. Try to toss a top 25 player that's got a really good name. See if you get lucky, and then you got to be willing to kind of just lose on the deal. If you're gonna get bad news, Kawhi Leonard is your player. If you own him, if you acquire him, you're just playing with fire. But you do these kinds of deals when you think you need another gear to get to. You don't do these deals when you're sitting pretty and you can just cruise and, oh, should I take that speculative massive risk? No, I'm cruising. So if you're struggling, you get a little bit more aggressive here. If your depth is not good, then you take Kawhi Leonard and you split him into a safer asset. We don't know. I like maybe somebody in Los Angeles with some inside information. Maybe like a company that plants trees or something. I don't know. They could tell us if there's something we should be worried about. But right now we're all gambling together. So you're going to have to get your game theory hat out and try to win it that way. Let's talk about John Collins, a little less risky in the riskiest sense here. He is a 12-team play for the rest of the season, no matter what right now. It doesn't matter that he missed 2 games with a groin injury. The reporting was murky. He returned this Sunday with a late round line. I mean, it was good, not great. 11 points, 4 boards, 3 combined catch counters with his 111 and a 71.4% mark from the field. It's a good line. But he's been an early round guy for a month in 28 minutes per game, 11 games in that sample, 14.4 points, 2.3 triples, 5.5 rebounds, 2.6 combined defensive stats. Great percentages, 68.2% from the field, which is not sustainable. So are we going to bet on Collins to be an early round guy the rest of the year? No. There's too much risk. There's too much injury stuff. There's trade stuff. There's all sorts of crap going on. They might just decide not to pass him the ball anymore once Kawhi and James Harden and everybody's sort of back. So it's risky, right? He's a 12-team guy no matter what. Any way you slice it, you got to call this guy a 12-team guy. You cannot drop John Collins. You can sell him high. By all means, sell him high. There's all sorts of reason to do that. I think if you can get a top 90 player in return for John Collins, it's probably good business because it's very unlikely that he continues doing this in Los Angeles or somewhere else. Plus you have the injury risk, plus you have the trade risk, plus you have they might not pass him the ball risk. There's a lot of risk out there. Top 90 for John Collins is early round value that you can toss across the table at somebody. And by the way, you don't have to go for top 90. Try top 60 first and see how it goes. And we move on to the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm asked, is it time to buy Austin Reeves? Well, if you want to get your hands on what has been a top 10 to 15 value on the season in a per game basis, who's 1 to 3 weeks away from a return, maybe they wait till the All-Star break. Maybe it's just going to happen here anytime now. I think you can probably, if you want to give a top 25 player, it might be the top of this thing because there is risk of re-injury. There is risk that LeBron and Luka say it's our team, and you could kind of peel off for a couple months here and be more of a 3rd round guy or something. But he's really consistent when on the floor. I think these valuations are pretty much what you're going to get here. And you're really just talking about the re-injury risk more than anything else. And maybe that like the season spins south because you got such big characters in Los Angeles. You got LeBron, all the things. But really, it's the injury risk that you're paying to acquire in some way, shape, or form. But there's been a lot of distance between now and the times that Austin Reeves have been good. You have LeBron playing well. You have Luka over there doing his thing. And I think a lot of people have sold Austin Reeves short in general for years. So the market's probably softer than it needs to be, a top 25 player, but try a top 30 or 35 player and see if you can do it. And I would definitely do it in any and or all of the situations I outlined above. Let's get to Memphis, where a lot of folks want to know if Cam Spencer is realistically going to survive all of this stuff. You got Ja Morant back, says he wants to be a Grizzly, says he's got a tattoo on his back. Well, that means everything. Ty Jerome is back soon, if not, I think possibly the next game. He's been practicing with the team, and they do think highly of him. I think he has a 24 to 27-minute role with the potential possibly to go higher than that. We've never seen it, and it's not exactly the season that screams play Ty Jerome 30 minutes, but we just don't know what we don't know. If this calf is healed and he doesn't have another issue with it, and he's been limited by his knee and also the depth in Cleveland in the past, I don't think he's going over 27 minutes, but I do think at least they like him and they need him, and that at least gives us some pretext for him to go higher. Anyway, so that's happening, right? And you also have Scottie Pippen Jr. coming at some point in time. The best thing about this for Cam Spencer is that it seems to me to be highly unlikely that Ja Morant stays in Memphis. I think it's about a quarter chance at maybe 40% chance at best, and that is really stretching. That's me saying I don't think that there's a market for Ja Morant. Memphis might decide to punt this and see if they can rehabilitate some of this value, but they're done with him and he is done with them. And the only thing I can think of that would have Ja Morant saying that in a press conference is A, that's what he's supposed to say, but B, maybe he looked out at the marketplace and got a taste of what it is out there. And he's like, okay, well, maybe I just stay in Memphis because it's not looking so good out there. I don't want to be humiliated by it being public what I'm worth on the marketplace, which is not that much right now. Now, he did have a good game over in Europe to rehabilitate that value to some degree. Back to Cam Spencer. Even if Ja Morant stays, I don't see them taking this guy off the floor who runs a significant portion of their offense, provides shooting, provides a little bit of defense, but provides some kind of just like smart connective play. And when they get into a pinch, they turn to Cam Spencer quite a bit. So I don't see them dropping him off the radar. Like, I don't think he goes beneath 20 minutes per game. And what we've seen for him on the season is a late round value in 20 minutes per game this season. So Cam Spencer at the worst of this is going to be a late round value. And some of those games might be top 150 games, and some of them might dip into the 175, but plenty will be in the top 80 and the top 90 and the 100. That's why we use averages. And that just gives you the safety you need, because if Ja Morant doesn't play, I think those numbers go up to 23, 24. With Scottie Pippen back in the rotation, by the way. He's not back at this point in time. We don't have an update there. But I think 27, 28 minutes for Cam Spencer, 29, 30 if guys aren't playing, if they're not, if Ty Jerome gets hurt or Scottie Pippen Jr. gets hurt, if they just decide Cam Spencer is the leader that they want to see playing for 28, 29, well, he's been a top 85 value on the season by totals this year already. So what makes us think that if he gets an even bigger role for the second half of the season than he had in the first half of the season, that he wouldn't have even better value going forward? I feel like we are looking at a possible top 50 run for Cam Spencer. And I don't think the scenario is that outlandish. I'd say it's actually probably more probable rather than less probable. So Cam Spencer is a great target right now. He's getting dropped. You should add him. He's I would probably have Cisse at number one, because I think he's got league winner written all over him. He's just got the contract stuff going on. Jalen Tyson and Cam Spencer is where I really start to get thrown off. There's the upside for Cam Spencer in the top 50 range, but Jalen Tyson is low and slow at top 75, plus a little bit of upside. I'd probably go Jalen Tyson over Cam Spencer. And there are probably some other players that I've promoted here that I would be happy to put into this list. And you can always send me a question at Aaron Bruski or here in the notes in the YouTube comments. And that, by the way, might be my number one thing I want to ask you guys for as we are continuing to grow this platform and do all of the different things. I want to pick up the engagement so we can continue to add more things here at sportsethos.com. We haven't been so focused on that, been more focused on product, etc. But right now, I actually want you guys to start talking. So Hit me up with your questions. Also, questions I'm getting. Am I stashing Ty Jerome? Yes. I think he's also in this list of run, don't walk. And I guess if I wanted to put him in the list with Cam Spencer, I would actually put him one notch above Cam Spencer. But there's a part of me that's so worried about Ty Jerome that if you wanted to put him more toward the bottom of this list, I'd be fine with it. I mean, this has been a broken season. He's not exactly, his injury profile has been there forever. He doesn't have a ton of experience being awesome, but people do generally believe he is. He looked fine in the shoot around the other day. He's probably going to come in and do Ty Jerome stuff. It's going to be fine. I would have him a little bit ahead of Cam Spencer because I do think they prioritize him over Spencer. And I can see Spencer letting Ty Jerome be the engine and Spencer just being the spot up and then dribble, drive, and assist guy. But Ty Jerome, absolutely stop this show and make sure Ty Jerome's on your roster because I think you're getting an announcement here pretty soon that he's playing. And after the other side of the All-Star break, he's probably really good to go, possibly not being held out in back-to-backs. And Isolo loves him. Coach Thomas Isolo loves him. I think he respects what he brings to the table. And so that's a yes on a stash. Scottie Pippen, I'm going to say no because there's 3 good guards ahead of him. Right now, maybe 2 if John Morant leaves, and Scottie Pippen has been productive in 25 minutes per game in the past. So not completely off the radar, but I think it's a little too early to stash there. And Zach Edey has a top 35 value over 11 games. I do think he's worth stashing in certain formats that trend more towards playoffs with IR slots. And if you got roster space, if it's just straight up roto right now and games played, there's no games played cap as there are not in a lot of championship formats, high stakes formats. I think the question of whether to hold Zach Edey is going to gain significant steam here in the next 3 weeks because there's a lot of time between now and the time he gets reevaluated, and also not a lot of season left after that. So you probably are feeling some stress if you're holding on to Zach Edey. I wouldn't be surprised to see Zach Edey on a bunch of waiver wires next week or the week after that. And we move on to the Miami Heat, where Khalil Ware is the topic du jour. You got Tyler Herro out, and Herro out for the entire 5-game road trip. You've got many people in Miami wanting Tyler Herro traded. Many people in Miami, including Khalil Ware, wanting more minutes for Khalil Ware. And Eric Spoelstra saying, no, not until you play hard, not until you play the Miami Heat culture way. And this is the thing for Khalil Ware to get up and over. And it's true. Like if he plays with full intensity and he does all of the little, the things the glue guys do that are, veteran level glue guy things, he would not be off the floor at all. He would be one of the league's better players, but he's learning this stuff as a young player in the league on the fly. And we'll see this happen at some point. He's been a top 40 to 65 guy in the season. I mean, you don't just exactly do that without having a great stat set, 11.6 points, 10 boards, 2 combined defensive stats, 1.2 triples, great efficiency. So he does all this easily. In his last game, not that great, 15 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, no defensive stats, 1 triple, 7 to 10 shooting in 18 minutes. Miami got throttled by Golden State, so not exactly a great measurement game. 3 weeks now in the dumps towards the bottom of the top 200. I was wishing for more bad games. So some of y'all, because I don't play in too many leagues where trades are possible, I want you guys to reap the benefits here. Khalil Ware will eventually be cut loose. It's not a question of if, it's just when. I think you're going to see a key injury. You're going to see a pivot of some sort in March where they say, all right, we've taught you enough, Khalil. Now you got to actually just go out there and do it. And what does that look like? Well, instead of 24 minutes per game, he gets 26 or 27, and top 40 to 65 becomes top 30 to 45. And that right now does not match with his perception. And people are panicking. Should they drop Khalil Ware? I don't think most people are thinking that way, but when you're in the bottom of the top 200 for 3 weeks, it starts to hurt, and you're starting to look at other places for value. You need to be right there to help these folks out. Top 75 easy. Try top 100 while it's really bad right now. I doubt it works, but top 75 I think will work, and I think it's basically printing money with this guy. So go out there and do that and let me know how it goes. All right, let's get to the Milwaukee Bucks, where Kevin Porter Jr. and Ryan Rollins have been Giannis'd, more or less. Kevin Porter Jr., a top 70 to 105 guy in the last 9 games, hitting just 40% of his shots. That's top 50 to 75 in the last 11 games. I think a little 11. It was 9 games that this slump has hit Kevin Porter Jr., but 11 games with Giannis back. Same numbers, top 55 to 75 in the 11 games that Giannis has been back. He's got 23 games in the season, Kevin Porter does. And if you include these 11 slower games, he's still a top 25 play on the year, 44% shooting from the field. Giannis isn't exactly making him better. Ryan Rollins, top 55 player on the season, hitting 46% of his shots from the field. Top 80 in the last 11 games with Giannis back, 41% from the field. So not only are these guys not getting to their usual spots with Giannis out, but Giannis isn't making them better. And I think that's the big thing that people around the league know with Giannis is the ball's got to be in his hands. It's got to be his way, and everybody else needs to do whatever they need to do to fit in around that. You got a couple guys on the ball who now all of a sudden all their easy shots are going away, and they're having to take more shots that are probably, a couple grenades here and there because everybody's in the paint waiting for Giannis to just bull rush, and these two guys have to play off of that and catching the ball in undesirable positions, and nobody's really concerned so much with the pass when it's Giannis. They just want to keep him out of the paint at all costs, so it leaves a lot of junky plays for guys like Kevin Porter and Ryan Rollins to try to navigate through. Giannis is going to try to make this work in Milwaukee. That said, we've got 2 weeks here for this thing to possibly heat up. And then over this summer, he's got an extension that needs to be signed in October. And if the Milwaukee Bucks, as the Hoops Collective pod broke down so well the other day, if the Milwaukee Bucks decide to make Giannis be the one that kind of kills them in this, that decision would expire in October. And that's not exactly how you want to run your team. You don't want to be subservient to Giannis and feeling like he's going to leave. And then, oh, by the way, the season opener's right there. So I think there is a little bit more added pressure to do this deal at the deadline. There's just not a great deal out there to be done. So maybe in free agency, during the draft, this is where we see something happen here. And then predicting these guys' rest of season value, the question becomes can Milwaukee lose enough games to stay further down the standings to not want to push through a Giannis injury? And I think Giannis will need to be restricted by his team, his personal team, and the team itself will need to restrict him because up to him, he will probably want to go out there and play the rest of the games. He's got knee issues. He's got a lot of reasons to not look at it that way, but he is kind of a guy that will go out there and play. So these valuations, the 55 to 75 for Kevin Porter over the last 11 games, that'll get better because he won't shoot 40%. He'll shoot 42, 44, something like that. That'll look like top 40 to 60 where he was rated at the beginning of the season. Ryan Rollins, kind of the same thing. I don't think he's going to be just a top 80 guy. It'll be more like a top 70 guy, the rest of the way without with Giannis around. You're going to look at that last 10 to 15 games and think that's the landing pad for Giannis to take this time off. Maybe he gets traded. Obviously, that clears things up for these guys. But those 10 to 15 games will give those guys a bump back up towards some of these other numbers that they've got. And you're probably better looking at Kevin Porter Jr. as a top 40, top 30 guy rest of season. And people aren't looking at him like that right now. He had an 0 for 9 night the other night. And then Rollins kind of top 60 the rest of the way. And I do think people have kind of held on to hope that Ryan Rollins is that dude. So I don't know if there's a lot of value swap there, but Kevin Porter Jr., because of these bad recent games, and I don't think people are really in sync with the idea that he's been a top 25 play when on the floor this season, I think you got a buy low opportunity here. Toss the proverbial top 75 for Kevin Porter Jr. and then count the money on the way back. Let's get to the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are completely boring. So we'll play a game of sell high, buy low, or hold for each of these three guys: Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, and Naz Reid. Okay, I think Julius Randle, we're going to sell high. I think Minnesota might be looking at what they can do to change the dynamic because they're not good enough to win everything. And they got a guy in Anthony Edwards that they want to make sure he thinks that they're trying to win everything. Otherwise, he starts knocking on other doors. And then Naz Reid has been tearing it up lately. Mid-round numbers, some early round spikes, but it makes sense that Naz Reid would bounce back after a slow start this season. There's not a lot of different places for stats to go in Minnesota. That's why they are so boring. I wouldn't call it like a sell high. I wouldn't call it, I would just call it a hold. Naz Reid's going to do good things the rest of the season, and you're just going to hold. And you're going to do the same thing for Anthony Edwards, who's been back up into the early rounds. He does the thing where he starts the season slow, and then he basically decides that he wants to show everybody he's the man. Right now, he's got a foot thing that's not great. I mean, he's missing games that he otherwise would normally play. So I don't think it's a nothing injury, is a bacteria or some sort of an infection going on as well. So I think they're going to manage it on a game to game basis. But Anthony Edwards is that dude. And I do think he's going to have a mid first round run the rest of the way. And even if they bring in somebody else, it won't matter because Anthony Edwards is the man. If anything, just reducing Julius Randle's role on the team and finding somebody who's more of a connector and a paint breaker that doesn't also need to shoot so much could actually improve Anthony Edwards' value. So Julius Randle, keep an eye on him as the pivot piece. In Minnesota, let's get to the New Orleans Pelicans. A lot of weird stuff going on because not only are they tanking, but they're not supposed to be tanking. But they're tanking. Or are they tanking? Who knows? Are they just bad? Well, they've got DeJounte Murray to figure out here soon. We get a lot of bad reports on DeJounte Murray. I got a search on DeJounte Murray on my Twitter feed. Half the time it's about drama with the ladies, who did this and who did that and who's he dating now and all that stuff. And then the other stuff is, we got to hear from DeJounte Murray's camp about whether he wants to play this month, or we haven't seen him yet, or, we don't have the good Jason Tatum updates that we're getting, for DeJounte Murray. We're not getting those updates. I think this looks like possible back-to-back rests the rest of the way this season. Maybe he gets, say, like 20 games without back-to-back rest toward the tail end of this season, and maybe they use him to also go on a push to try to get into the play-in. But it looks like a lot of hassle, and you have a lot of players on this team that probably jumped at least some degree of the pecking order while DeJounte Murray was out. He's been a top 40 guy, DeJounte Murray, for the last couple of seasons. It feels like a top 60 expectation would actually be a little bit high right now. Top 75 seems like a better expectation for DeJounte Murray coming off of a big injury, heading into a season where he needed to get back on the floor sooner for a lot of the rust and the question marks to be ironed out before the All-Star break. After the All-Star break, just a little bit too much gunk there to go through. So DeJounte Murray, I'm not adding him anywhere. I was 2 to 3 weeks ago pretty aggressively adding him because we were right in front of what the expected time line would have been to get some news. Theoretically, the news could have been good. It wasn't, and we moved on to the next question of whether Herb Jones needs to be on rosters. And I don't think the answer is yes. I think that there's questions about the explosion and the player itself. Have the injuries worn him down? Is he no longer special on the defensive side? And then wherever he lands, it's not probably going to be as wide open as New Orleans has been. So all those questions, and with weight of his value so heavily invested in steals, I don't think we need to do that. And then Jordan Poole, I don't think we need to do that either. I think that Jordan Poole has played his way out of any consistent role in New Orleans. I think the stuff where he throws it up off the backboard pass in a critical game the other day, I think it just underscores how he views the game, as a playmaking, dribbling shooter. It's about, you can get stats in this league, but can you make other players better? And he's just not. And there's defensive issues, and his contract's big, but it's not like force me to play big. And sure, he could be good at some point in time and be a top 75 guy. I had him ranked highly in the B150 because we didn't see a whole lot of promise in the New Orleans roster, the box score. And an injury here and just a bad start, other players stepping up into the void and being better than him. Jordan Poole does not need to be on rosters in 12 or maybe even 14 team formats. And if you're doing it, it's a luxury stash that somehow he gets his head together. Let's get to the New York Knicks, who are imploding. Karl Anthony Towns and Mike Brown, this train wreck I've seen coming for about 3-4 weeks. Oddly enough, Cat's had some of his better stat lines lately, despite when you look on the floor, like he's not trying and he's like bitching and moaning, and he's got that look on his face. He's getting booed by the home fans. Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges might want to kill the dude. And that's really what it looks like. And it looks like trade rumors, probably, if I had to guess, have started seeping into that locker room. And Karl Anthony Towns is attempting, the Knicks are attempting to get him out of there. And maybe they just think they can't win with him defensively. They'd rather take their chances with, old peg leg Mitchell Robinson, who can't stay on the floor. But Mitchell Robinson looks better out there than Karl Anthony Towns does, offensive issues aside. Karl Anthony Towns has had this kind of coming his way for a little bit here, not really learning the details of the game to stop fouling so much, not caring about defense, not really looking at the court and thinking like, how can I make my teammates better? Being very interested in all the things that he wants to get out of it, shooting, scoring, and whatnot. And a lot of hat, no cattle kind of a deal. So I think you're seeing this just all blow up right now. Can Mike Brown manage this? Yeah, he can. And at the same time, Tom Thibodeau, just because he's Tom Thibodeau, basically just scaring the living bejesus out of guys like, I'm going to make you play like this or you don't play at all. And I'll go down with the ship. I think Mike Brown's better at not going down with the ship than Tom Thibodeau. Tom Thibodeau's like, Cat, you're going to go out there, you're going to play hard. And if you don't, this is what you're going to get. And Cat had one of his better seasons, as a result of it. So you got a lot of different stuff going on right now. I think Karl-Anthony Towns probably needs a couple of weeks, or a week for the All-Star break to get his body right. He's been a little dinged up. Absent that, he's the same guy that he's been in the last couple stops. I mean, he's not exactly defensively tearing it up. He's not a blocks guy. I mean, he gets you his points, the threes, the boards, all the different Cat things. You'd be buying low on Cat if you bought him right now. And I don't think you should be selling Karl-Anthony Towns just because like the optics are bad. I think you hang on to Karl-Anthony Towns and or buy low. I don't know that this is going to work out for him in New York, where he's going to just like change and be the first round guy that everybody hoped he would be, including New York. But like top 20 value in New York is in play. And then if he does get traded to a place that actually wants him and or the market says no, and then like you got ownership that could come in, you got teammates and players that could come in and tell Mike Brown, hey, look, we got to scrap this system. And the system's not exactly that different, but there is an emphasis on kicking the ball up the floor. Guys like Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby have been empowered to take more shots. There's not a mandate to get Karl-Anthony Towns shots. It's not take turns basketball like Tom Thibodeau was more or less preaching without kind of getting into the ins and outs of it. You had Jalen Brunson handle the ball. You have Karl-Anthony Towns handle the ball. That was the pecking order. Josh Hart, run up and down the floor, do stuff. Mikal Bridges, you go stand in the corner. OG Anunoby, more or less, you go stand in the corner. Those two guys have been empowered, Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, to kind of do more than what they've been accustomed to doing. That's why you've seen some of the bumps, especially for Mikal Bridges. Karl-Anthony Towns has been fuming about that. And in his defense, a lot of the games that I've watched in the last 2 or 3 weeks of the Knicks, they're not looking for him at all. Like it is kind of like borderline offensive / dumb that you have a guy who's an offensive basketball player and not a defensive basketball player, and you're not utilizing him. You're making him run up and down the floor. He looks tired. And I think something has to give in New York, and these kinds of dips don't happen for this kind of a squad very often. So this is a pretty big event going on in New York. And Karl-Anthony Towns being a top 25 player the rest of the way seems like a really good bet to me. And it feels like the optics are suggesting the other things are going to happen. Like he's going to be a top 40 guy. He's going to be a top 40 guy with injury risk. Maybe he'll even get phased out of the New York offense and banished to Sacramento or something. Buy Karl-Anthony Towns for a top 30 player. I think the math is good there. And maybe a top 40 guy could actually be possible. And then Josh Hart producing at a top 60 level this season in 32 of 43 games. 12 points, 8 boards, 5 assists, 1.6 combined defensive stats. Now dealing with a right ankle issue. It's dipped his value into the top 175 to 200 range. Buy the dip. Josh Hart is Mr. New York. Maybe Josh Hart is somehow in some sort of trade rumor. I'm not up to date on Josh Hart trade rumors, but when you see a team give up the way that New York has, that's Sacramento stuff. And it's not like Mike Brown stuff, but it's Sacramento stuff. And something has to be said. Brown came in and tried to do something that was very Mike Brown of him to do. Coaches get criticized because they're too nice to players, and then coaches get praised when they come in and tell people how it is. Well, he came in and he told people we need to modernize this offense, and he's stuck to his guns all season long. Something has to give there. Mike Brown's going to have to give on that, and everybody's involved is going to have to make a change. And I think for a high-profile team in New York with this much expectations, you will see that change, and that's why I say buy the dip on both players. All right, that's a lot of New York talk. Let's get to the Oklahoma City Thunder, where we have Jalen Williams hurt again. This sucks. We're looking at 2 to 3 weeks, I think, at minimum with this hamstring. And then when he gets back, it's a rhythm issue and his shooting wrist. He's been leaving shots short. He had some good games prior to this injury. So maybe this is just bad luck at the worst time. Jalen Williams, a top 60 to 75 value this season, starting to heat up. And almost, I think if you're taking a buy on Jalen Williams, it's a leap of faith that you can get more games rather than less games out of the hamstring, and that the shooting issues trend back toward top 50 and top 30 ranges. So you kind of get the ranges with what you're working there. But what are we doing with like now this opportunity? Aaron Wiggins is a guy that I had high hopes for entering the season. It hasn't happened for him this season, but he's been heating up independently of this Jalen Williams thing. Also top 60 to 75 value over the last 7 games, 25 and a half minutes per game, 10 points, 2 threes, 5.4 boards, 2 assists, 2.5 combined defensive stats. That's the kicker right there. Every now and then there's a player in Oklahoma City that kind of becomes their guy, for whatever they're trying to accomplish at a given time. I think Jalen Williams swapping in Aaron Wiggins makes a ton of sense, and he's already doing it. It could be dicey, but I kind of feel like he's going to be a top 100 guy for the next 3 weeks. So Aaron Wiggins, you might actually get some rest of season value after that as well, or you just get a good 3-week run here. But interesting stuff there. And maybe we see Lou Dort and Case and Wallace get a little bit more consistency, but I'm not really banking on much beyond that. And yes, this does mean that AJ Mitchell is probably should have been designated this from the beginning of the season, like week 3 or whenever he popped off. But he's like a must roster guy the rest of the way. All right, let's get into Orlando, where we have Anthony Black taking over Europe. People are calling his dunk like one of the best dunks of the year, whatever they're calling it. And I watched that dunk like 10 times. I was not in a great spot to watch things. I was kind of like running around doing stuff. And every time I watched it, I'd say, man, that looks cool. But I think like anybody could have done it. Like he just kind of snuck that thing in there. It was more of a happen chance that the players around him were just a half second too late and they all collided at the same time. Falling like bowling pins or some sort of slapstick stuff. But Anthony Black, a top 105 to 130 player on the season in 30 minutes per game, 46.6% shooting from the field is interesting, 73% from the foul line on 4 attempts per game and 2.4 turnovers. These are the things that are holding him back a little bit in terms of his season-long production. Now, his shooting this season is 4% better from the field and the three-point line, while doubling attempts, in terms of pure volume year over year. So he's on a heater. It's possible he's turned a corner here with some of the shooting. He certainly has the physical skills to gain the space necessary to be good to make that happen. He shot 76% from the foul line last season, and his improvement to 73 here comes on an 80% run over the last 14 games. So like this foul shooting issue could maybe not become an issue. Maybe he gets to 80% this year. He was at 76 last year. So, up and down and all around from the foul line for him. The 2-month surge has been a top 75 to 100 surge over the last month. He's been an early round play with 20 points, 2.6 triples, 4 boards, 5.5 assists, 2 combined defensive stats. 50% shooting from the field, 80% shooting from the foul line. So that surge on the shooting side has gone up and beyond his now new baseline. If we want to be kind and say he has a new baseline, he's up and above that to get his early round numbers. Now, without factoring in Jalen Suggs' return here soon and Franz Wagner, who's already back, I think he was due to settle in as a top 75 to 100 play, kind of without those guys. Once we adjust for kind of the overages in the shooting and get him back into his baseline, I think we're at about top 75 to 100. Now we got 2 guys coming back. They're going to knock him even further. And I do think that Anthony Black is, and you hear this in telecast constantly, he's the guy that they need to keep going to. Your Paolo Banchero offense is a classic example of, sure, you can do it, but does it make anybody better? It's a theme in today's show. I think it's the 3rd or 4th time we've gone to this. Nobody is that scared of Banchero standing at about 18 feet and taking long twos, or putting his head down and spinning and constantly getting picked because everybody and their mother knows that they got to dig right there. Like all that stuff is not moving the needle. It's going to get you good stats, but it's not going to get you good results. And Anthony Black can get in there and do the stuff that Desmond Bane can't do, which is a lot of straight line wiggle, explosive ball handling stuff. Bane can do it, but he's not doing it because, again, you got 5 feet in the paint and a lot of his stuff he has to force. So there's more need for Anthony Black to be good. I just think with those two players coming back, it's going to keep him as a late round guy, which is probably where he's going to sit until somebody else gets hurt. And then next season, I hope that Orlando fashions themselves around him to some degree. Quick note, if you guys are watching us on YouTube, make sure you head on over to the Sports Ethos YouTube channel for our daily fantasy content. So just click and get into the channel. Make sure that you're subscribed, see everything that we're doing there with all of our daily stuff. It's a ton of content, and I'm so proud of our guys and our team that have been working on it this season. We have really enjoyed a massive bump from YouTube and video, and I get to get out here and do some content without typing. And for those of you who don't know, I have an injury that keeps me from typing so much. All right, let's get to the Philadelphia 76ers. If I had to roster one out of Quentin Grimes and Kelly Oubre, who would I roster and why? Another great question posed to me before this show. Okay, well, they produce similarly. Both are playing about 31 minutes per game. Both play in fairly stressed out circumstances. I'm going to take the player who's a little bit better, as Quentin Grimes is generally in the 110 range by the worst measurement, and 120 for Kelly Oubre. I'll take the player doing better that's got a better health profile. That'll be Quentin Grimes. Not so much going on in Philadelphia that we don't know about already. Let's get to the Phoenix Suns. Jalen Green returns tonight. What's this going to do to everybody else is pretty much the question that we're talking about all the time right now. So looking at Jalen Green, what he does well is he shoots a lot of field goals. He shoots a lot of threes. He shoots a lot of free throws with the lower end rebounds and assists. So we won't really worry about it, rebounds and assists so much. But when we look at the field goal attempts, we go in a list of who takes the most. Dylan Brooks takes the most. And right now it's 17 per game, second on the team next to Devin Booker here. Brooks, the top 100 to 115 value in 31 minutes per game, played 37 to 43 games, get you points, some threes, and it starts to taper off fast after that. He's probably the guy that takes the biggest hit here. Now, Grayson Allen has never shot more than 9 field goal attempts per game. He did that in his first year in Phoenix, which was a breakout season for him. Now he's up to 13 and change attempts this season. He's taking 3 more 3-point attempts than any other season of his career. His assists and steals are up as well. I think with Grayson Allen, what they've noticed is this is a player who can rise and fire over the top of a defense from deeper than the 3-point line. They want to play in space. They want to let him use some of his athleticism after he dropped whatever poundage he gained last season. I don't know what was going through his head there, but that was a season we missed on him. You know, we thought it was going to happen, never happened. This is a season that's actually happening. He's a top 70 guy on a per game basis in 26 games. His 13.2 attempts are probably going to take a hit here. I think these two guys, by the virtue of what they do on the basketball floor, are going to take the biggest chunk of the hit. Devin Booker's been a top 40 to 60 value on the season. He's already given up shots. He's got 1 less per game. It's maybe, I would be interested to see the dribble stats. I would say that, you know, he's getting his shots, but I would guess the dribbling stats are a little bit less as there's more ball handlers on the floor. Maybe 2 to 3 less shots, considering he had a couple seasons where he shot a ton. He's hit a career low 30% from deep. He's lost 2 attempts from deep this season. Probably if he starts shooting and making more, you'll start to see him taking more. But I think he's going to get hit a little bit here as well. And that leads us to Colin Gillespie, who's been a top 50 to 60 value per game in 9 and 8 cat leagues, respectively, you know, not drafted by anybody other than Sports Ethos folks. Also, in addition to that, everybody and their mother's been waiting for this guy to not have value. And we have been screaming from mountaintops, do not listen to any of that crap. He is good to go. And he's been good to go all season in just 28 minutes per game, showing people constantly that he is that dude. He's had so many big moments this season. He's played with incredible courage. I mean, he just is that dude, and he's not going to stop being that dude. He's been good for top 30 to 40 value on the season by totals. He takes just 10.7 field goal attempts per game. I don't see how they shave anything more than, like, I can't see him playing less than 24 minutes per game going forward. That would be a shock to me. Even I think he just sits at the 26 number until they have some injuries and he's back up to 28 and more. They don't want less than 10.7 shots for him per game. They're good shots. They're efficient shots. They're valuable shots. They make other people better. So Colin Gillespie is part of the answer, not part of the question mark in Phoenix. Does he lose a round of value? Sure. I mean, if he plays 26 minutes per game, the other numbers will come back. He could lose a round, maybe 2. You're not going to panic. If there's any of that going on, you're just going to go buy Colin Gillespie low and send me a thank you or a thumbs up on the YouTube video, or a subscribe, or shoot us a comment. Do one of those things and I will be forever in your debt. So the way I look at this is, when this happens today, and if Jalen Green can stay on the floor, he's going to probably take a round or two, if not three, from Dylan Brooks, maybe a round two at the most from Grayson Allen, Booker maybe a round, Gillespie maybe a round, and Jordan Goodwin, I think, is the guy that might get shown the door there, maybe only get like 5 to 10 minutes a night as a back-end rotation guy. He's been good too, Jordan Goodwin. So that'll be interesting. And I'll also be interested to see if Jalen Green can produce in the top 75 range. I mean, there are a lot of good players now in Phoenix. It's not like they haven't earned the right to keep a lot of their shots. I think Jalen Green, instead of coming in with like a full-on green light, it's just like moderately green. And we'll see a couple rounds of possible value loss there. Let's get out of Phoenix and into Portland. Do we need to roster anybody outside of Denny Avdia, Donovan Clingan, Shaden Sharp, or Drew Holiday on this squad in 12-team leagues? A lot of people want to know, is Jeremy Grant worth something? Is Tamani Kamara worth holding? Grant, a top 100 guy, went on the floor, only playing 20 out of 44 games. His salary is being used in trade discussions. I don't think you need to attach to that at this point in time. If he's starting and available and you need a guy for one game, different story. I don't think you need to be trying to roster Jeremy Grant in the event that there's something good that's going to happen in the future. I just don't think that's going to happen. Shaden Sharp, 77.7% from the foul line. Would like to see a little bit more there. Everything else is in a decent range. A little bit too many turnovers, top 100 to 150 and 8 and 9 cat on the season. Not exactly tearing it up unless you're in a points league or you don't care about some of his deficiencies. Tamani Kamara, top 145 to 175, 8 and 9 cat numbers there. It's the percentages are not good. Turnovers are a little high, and it's just not good enough to float 13 points, 5 boards, and 2.6 assists. He's getting you the combined cash counting stats. He's getting you 4 there, but we just needed more. We needed more, like 15 points, 16 points, just more and more. Now, the only saving grace here is that he has been a top 90 to 105 guy playing in every game this season, despite starting the preseason with a knee issue that was enough to make me think maybe that knee issue was not great, but he's been playing, and those numbers do play. He's a top 100 guy. If he could just do anything, he might get to that valuation that had people drafting him in the 5th and 6th rounds. I did not get Tamani Kamara anywhere, or one place. I got Tamani in one place despite having a high rank. Everybody else had him ranked high too. So I didn't get anything there, and it's worked out for me. Drew Holiday, top 50 to 70, went on the floor, but we've only seen him for 16 games. But that's worth rostering because when he gets back, he might just keep it up. And then Caleb Love, his efficiencies are keeping him from being a standard league guy. But if you're in a points format, or if you're punting blocks, percentages, and turnovers, maybe like 2 out of the 4 categories there, he might have some late round value for you. And it might be just some fun poppy PRA lines in the process. Let's get to the Sacramento Kings. Talked about him in the earlier show. Domantas Sabonis, getting a couple 25-minute games and not really producing. And he hasn't produced this season. I mean, he's basically out of the middle rounds in his production. That's not even counting the time off. That's a per game number. And it's just been bad, right? You bring in Russell Westbrook, who Sabonis wanted to bring in. So that's on you, dude. Stealing the team's rhythm, and it's up and down and all around. It's classic Russ stuff. Domantas has been sitting the sideline more or less, watching those numbers fly around and others getting them. Now, I think we're in a position where we're going to start to see those numbers ramp up, and we're going to start to see Domantas Sabonis try to rehabilitate his trade value. There are all sorts of crisscrossing signals going on in Sacramento about whether the team wants to move him, whether teams want Sabonis, whether the team should play him, not play him. Doug Christie's out there singing Dylan Cardwell's praises. And by the way, the only player that's like more physically imposing that you don't know about in the NBA right now, other than Dylan Cardwell, is Moussa Cisse. And Dylan Cardwell is like this guy that should be playing in the NFL, who can jump very, very high, block shots, defends, plays borderline dirty. He's doing the WWE stuff, calling the crowd every other play. It's funny. And Doug Christie's out there singing his praises, saying, I played that guy over to Sabonis in the 4th quarter because that guy defends, and Sabonis, well, we'll just not say the quiet part out loud. All that aside, Sabonis is a top 20 guy pretty much in his sleep lately in fantasy leagues. I don't like the 50 mismatched players that they have in Sacramento, and none of them are named De'Aaron Fox, and because of that, this has been problematic for Sabonis. He hasn't been able to be the second round player that he should be? Can he be a third round player? Can he be a fourth round player? Can they wrap their entire offense around him, let him finish the season strong and possibly trade him during the offseason? That's the best bet if you're both Domantas Sabonis and the Kings. And so for those reasons, I think there is some momentum to buy low here. I think Sabonis is a big name. It's going to be hard to move him for anything too low. And I do think he should be easily acquired with a top 75 player based on the season that he's had. But because of the name, and because of the quote, all NBA talk, which was ridiculous at the time, but here we are. That means he's going to be expensive here. And I think top 65, top 55 is going to be the price that you have to pay to get Domantas Sabonis. But I do think there's opportunity there. So see if you can expose that. And maybe you got to have to lean in with a player that you think is going the other direction that nobody else, thinks is going to go down the tubes. Let's get to Keegan Murray. Should you stash or drop Keegan? I think you got to get Keegan on a roster because this dude's been a top 80 guy this season with struggles, and he's shown us on defense that he can do some things that can be the counterweight to what happens when Sacramento does Sacramento stuff. If he's going to get you defensive numbers, that just makes it a lot easier. Top 80 ball based on the strength of some of those defensive numbers has kept the sporadic shots and the bad offense. It's kept it from really killing his value where he would normally be in the late rounds. Top 80 is not growing on trees, folks, and he's going to be back on the basketball floor within a week or two. Plus, you get the All-Star break to kind of give him another week of getting healthier. So when he gets back on the other side of the All-Star break, it might just be, let's see what we can do with Keegan and let's see what we can do with Domantas, which I think would be good for both players. Anybody else worth stashing in Sacramento? I do think you can make a case for Malik Monk, who you're starting to hear rumbles about, we might just keep Malik Monk after we killed his trade value around the league all summer long. And if that happens, that I do think would be his best scenario because Zach LaVine might decide that he's going to get injured and not play for the rest of the season because he's over it. You're probably going to get a trade of DeMar DeRozan. You're probably going to get a trade of Keon Ellis, and that's going to leave Malik Monk possibly in Sacramento with the top 50 to 100 potential that I've been crowing about all season, but it seems like a fading dream way off into the distance. Let's get to the San Antonio Spurs. When Devin Vassell gets back, are there any Spurs outside of Wemby, Fox, and Castle that are worth rostering? I'll throw a 50-50 shot for my guy, Julian Champagnie. I think that he's outproduced and outplayed and is, despite the massive disparity in contracts and how much they make, I think he's actually eclipsed him. It's in terms of overall ability. It's very complimentary of the rest of the team. So I think Julian Champagnie is the other guy that could be worth rostering. Let's get to the Toronto Raptors. Would I hold or drop the following three? Jakob Poeltl, drop. I don't think he's healthy enough to be a good fantasy asset. Colin Murray-Boyles, I would hold on only the premise that he's got a couple more weeks of value left in him. I think when they get a big, if it's Poeltl that can manage to come back or they trade for one, Colin Murray-Boyles will be a 25-minute per game player producing about top 150 to 160 value. And this team wants to compete, so I don't see that there's a silly season that's going to help him out. And then RJ Barrett, if the format is working for you, I think there is a pretext to hold. And I would probably use that pretext to hold through the trade deadline. And then on the other side of that trade deadline, it could very easily be a dump depending on where he trades. If he gets traded to, if he stays in Portland or probably Toronto, I do think that he would probably shift toward being more of a top 75 guy, top 85, top 95. And then the turnovers are not that great depending on how he gets deployed. There's a lot of different things. I think he goes down in the pecking order if he stays in Toronto, who might also try to get rid of Emmanuel quickly. But they're the big team right now that's trying to shove chips in the middle. And the constitution of this team, I don't think it's going to get better for RJ Barrett. I think it's going to get worse. So hopefully he can get traded to a place that can help. Maybe Golden State. I don't know. All right, we got a couple more teams to go here. We got the Utah Jazz. Folks asking about Bryce Sensabaugh. He's a rest of the season play. I don't think so. I think he gets hot from time to time, and they need his scoring from time to time. But the defensive issues and the kind of the lack of overall gravity to his offensive game make putting all the eggs in the basket of Bryce Sensabaugh not a wise play. So I think he's just going to be on again, off again. I don't think he's a rest of season play. And is it Kyle Filipowski time? I think it's Kyle Filipowski time. You just, leave it to this guy to post a top 60 week. And you get Lauri Markkanen just disappearing mysteriously with an illness, out again tonight. And I was I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I told you all to hold Kyle Filipowski. I was telling you all that you could drop. I didn't want to drop, and I'm just holding on for dear life, hoping that they flip the switch. Well, top 60 week, averaging 13.3 points, one triple, 7.7 boards, 3 assists, 2 combined defensive stats, and 26.7 minutes per game. Commonly referred to as a Filipowski, and nobody says that except for me, but this is a classic risk-reward upside play. He goes up the ranks because he's doing good right now. And we're nearing a potential pivot point, whether it's trade deadline or the Utah Jazz decide they want to start losing games. He did it again on Sunday, a top 60 to 75 line. So we've got recency working for us, 13.6 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals in 26 minutes of Filipowski. Ace Bailey or Walter Clayton rest of season. These guys, I like Clayton, I think, over Bailey at this point. I think Bailey will be prioritized and probably has better odds at maybe best value here from here to rest of the season. But in terms of something that will really work, if Walter Clayton gets the ball for 26, 27 minutes per game and Lauri Markkanen exits stage right, but they don't get so bad that it's so up and down, you can see a future with Walter Clayton maybe having top 75 upside. It's a murky future with a lot of twists and turns, but at least he can get there. Ace Bailey, I think, is going to just kind of boom or bust every other game, and then all of his shots are tougher than your average shots. So I like Ace Bailey. I think will have the numbers, but I actually get more excited about Walter Clayton. And then let's finish up with the Washington Wizards. Should people sell Alex Sarr is a question I get all the time. Top 40 to 50 per game on the season, 28 minutes per game, 17 points, 1 3, 7.5 boards, 3 assists, 3 combined defensive stats. And here's the big one. Last year, he was hitting 39% from the field. This year, he's hitting 50% from the field on 14 attempts, and then 70% for the foul line on 3.4 attempts per game. So he's taken a 10% increase in the field goal percentage, 4% better from the 3-point line, and he's cut some of his attempts from deep, which, again, people want their big men in fantasy to shoot threes. Well, I kind of look at it the opposite way. It's the devil's in the details there. If you make it a lot of them, go shoot them. If it's not affecting your shot diet, go do that too. But if you start floating around the perimeter, chucking up too many threes, it hurts your fantasy value. And Sarr has done this the right way this season. He's gotten more efficient. His blocks are up 0.5 per game. So it's a great season for Sarr. There's no surprise there. We already know that. What are we doing with Washington? And I do think there is one little silver lining is that they do want Trae Young to play. If you start to see Trae Young, he wore a Georgetown uniform to the game in Washington the other day, Georgetown, a college nearby. And also, if Trae Young figures out there's not a pot of gold out there, I don't want to wait another season to get the next contract. I do want to hitch my wagon to the Washington Wizards. And I think you'll start to see them play him this season, 10, 15 games, with a focus on getting Alex Sarr involved. And that might just be one additional reason to keep Sarr on the floor. So it's one of many competing angles that we have to consider here. Sarr has had some calf injuries. Sarr does influence winning. If he's not on the floor, it's going to make them a little bit worse. So therefore, Alex Sarr, still a lot of momentum to have some missed games here down the stretch. Should you sell Sarr? Probably. I would say at his top 40 to 50 numbers, if you wanted to sell him for exactly that, I think that's great business. I think people would probably be into that to some degree because he's a shiny name. But if you need to drop it down to top 60 to get a player that you don't have to worry about down the stretch, top 75 even, so you don't have to worry about it down the stretch, I think it's worth the value swap to have that benefit. So I do think there is a little bit of a sell high here. Should people sell on Keyshawn George? This is an interesting one. The Athletic article just spotlighted that if Trae Young plays this season, it would probably take from Keyshawn George more than a few other people on the court. And they don't want to do that. They don't want that. They don't want him impacted. They don't want Trey Johnson impacted. They don't want Bub Carrington impacted. I don't know why Bub Carrington has a stranglehold on the franchise, but he does. Keyshawn, a top 60 to 100 per game guy in 8 and 9 cat leagues, respectively. That team's bad, and he's kicking the ball around the yard a little bit with 3.1 turnovers per game. The other numbers are great. You get the 15, 16 points. You get the 2+ triples. You get 6 boards, 5 assists. The defensive stats are there. He's also, like Sarr last season, a 39% guy, 46, or is it 37 last year, 46 this year. So Keyshawn George also improving his shot diet, his profile at large, and 8% better from 3-point distance on the same number of volume. The foul shooting is actually the same exact number from this season to last at 75.3. Rebounding and assists, rebounding up, assists have nearly doubled. Blocks are up as well. Turnovers have doubled. So Keyshawn George all over the stat sheet. And I don't think I'm going to worry about possibly Trae Young coming in and kind of taking his value away. I think that stuff works further down chain. Keyshawn George might get more efficient. He might get a couple more easy shots. He'll have some less volume. 60 to 100 in a worst case might look like 75 to 100 as the turnovers go down. So not a lot of value change there, and the possibility that they just don't do the Trae Young thing this year and they lean into Keyshawn George, and he continues to get you these top 60 numbers in 8-cat leagues, which are succulent and will possibly play like top 40 numbers if he just plays the rest of the way, though he's had some injury issues. Last question here. I'm asked to rank Justin Champagnie, Bilal Coulibaly, Trey Johnson, Trae Young, and Bub Carrington rest of the season. I will take Justin Champagnie, who I will not let you guys drop. Trey Johnson, I think his variance in the shooting numbers has dropped him to more of a top 100 play, where Justin Champagnie profiles as a top 75 guy going forward with upside beyond that. Bilal Coulibaly can't stay on the floor, and he's been a late round guy, so I kind of have him behind that. Bub Carrington can't get anywhere in the rankings because of his numerous statistical deficiencies to go along with some good PRA and three-point numbers. And then Trae Young playing 10 to 15 games in a 30 to 40 game slate is not good for business and fantasy leagues. And that's going to do it for this episode of Fantasy NBA Today. If you're listening on the pod feed, take 60 seconds. A 5-star review really helps us out if you're so inclined. We would appreciate that. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the Sports Ethos channel so you guys never miss an episode. Special thanks to producer Andre, Doc, who's traveling back from the Indiana game and has had a whole lot of fun. That Doc and our fantasy basketball content team, Mike, Keston, Mark, Tim, William, Pedro, Yoel, John, Paul, Anthony, and many more. Shout out to the tech team. From all of us here at Sports Ethos, thank you for tagging along for the ride. We will see you very soon. This has been Fantasy NBA Today, presented by FanDuel.